So did Kaapo Kakko just prevent people from being fired or even traded?
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1193 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, I don't know. I guess a win is a win, right? I mean, bottom line, the Raiders came into this game against the Montreal Canadiens, having lost 5 in a row, all 5 losses, obviously in regulation. One of the worst 5-game stretches that I can ever recall in my time as a fan of this team. Against the Flyers yesterday, I said, and I stand by this, the first period of that game is the worst 20 minutes of hockey that I have ever watched this franchise play. But now that we got all the bad stuff out of the way, let's get to the good stuff. The Rangers found a way to get it done. It wasn't pretty. They obviously didn't finish this game the way that you would like to see them finish, up 3-1 against the team that's in dead last in the Eastern Conference, the Montreal Canadiens. And you give away the lead in the third period with some careless play, some sloppy play, a couple of defensive breakdowns. But the bottom line, they won a game that they absolutely, positively needed to win. And it comes courtesy, once again, of the younger players on the New York Rangers. I mean, Kakko, he's in year number 6, but he is still a very young player. And the players linking up for this goal, you had Filip with a great keep-in to Jones, to Cuylle, to Kakko for the goal. And we'll break down the goal in greater detail in just a minute. But more importantly, I honestly believe this goal by Kaapo Kakko, first of all, I think it's the biggest goal that he's ever scored as a member of the New York Rangers. When you consider the dire straits that this team has been in, how ugly it's gotten, and just how badly this team needed a win and needed to get 2 points. But I'll take it a step further, and I mentioned in the intro just a minute ago, Kakko with this goal may have legitimately kept people from being fired or traded. And I'm not saying that everybody's off the hook just yet. I mean, it is just one win, and it is against a team that, once again, is dead last in the Eastern Conference. So we do have to keep things in perspective here. But Kaapo Kakko with this goal, it at least buys the Rangers a little bit of a reprieve. Like I said, they badly needed to get a win. I joked on Twitter after this game that, does anybody even remember who has the Broadway hat? It's been so long since the Rangers won a game. And of course, in the locker room, after every game that they win, whoever's got the Broadway hat from the last game, he passes it on to somebody else that's deserving on the team. And I'm not even sure where that Broadway has been the last handful of days here. But regardless, obviously a big win. And potentially Kaapo Kakko and Will Cuylle and Zach Jones, everybody that had a hand in this play, potentially saving jobs and potentially extending the Ranger career of at least one player, maybe multiple players. You know, we'll never know for sure now. And like I said, they're not out of the woods yet, these players and these coaches, and, you know, certainly Chris Drury. I think everybody in this organization is probably still feeling the heat even after this win here today, but it gives them another chance. And now you've got a division matchup against the Devils looming on Monday. Gonna have some more thoughts on that in a little bit here as well. But let's go ahead and break down this power play goal at the end of regulation, scored by Kaapo Kakko. I know the Canadiens weren't all that happy about the penalty that was called. I know they weren't happy about the fact that it looked like Will Cuylle probably got away with a trip in the offensive zone here. Had he gotten called for this, I believe it would have been the third, it was at least the third offensive zone penalty that the Rangers took in this game. So they did play better in this game, a lot more intensity, a lot more fire, but still a lot of things that they need to clean up. They got away with one there, I'll admit it. And but you know what? Again, you'll take the win any way you can get it right now. And over the last handful of seasons here, a lot more calls have gone against the Rangers, especially if it involves a replay and the Situation Room in Toronto. A lot more calls like that have gone against the Rangers than for them. So, you know what? Maybe the hockey gods finally smiled on them a little bit in this game. Maybe the fact they played hard, busted in this game, showed some physicality, showed some edge. We're mixing it up with the Canadiens after the whistle. Maybe that, they kind of earned themselves a little bit of a break there. But that was a trip on Cuylle, and it didn't get called. Bottom line, didn't get called. The puck is about to come out of the Canadian zone. And a great play by Filip. He busted it to get over there, extended his stick, and was able to keep the puck from crossing the blue line, thus preventing a possible offside against the New York Rangers, or one of those situations where everybody's got to leave the offensive zone and you've got to regroup before you can go back in. But Chytil keeps the play alive. He keeps the puck in the O-zone. Really nice play there. It goes to Zach Jones, and Jones picks up the loose puck. He starts moving right toward the net. And as he's doing this, the Canadians kind of converge on him a little bit. Initially, when I saw the play live, I thought Jones just kind of lost control of the puck here. But no, I think even though he was under duress, he kind of spun and he had an idea of where Cuylle was, and he just kind of moved the puck in that direction. It got to Cuylle in front of the net. Now, when Cuylle receives this pass, he's got his back to the net, so he's not really in position to shoot, but he knows he's got Kakko to his left, passes it to him, and Kakko just stuffs this thing home. Kakko shot this puck like he was trying to put it through the glass behind the net, and he scored here. We know that there's times where, Kakko certainly can be a little bit frustrating, and I think one of the things that's kind of held him back is at times it feels like there's been a lack of finish in his game on these scoring opportunities, but he finished here in a big-time spot when he absolutely needed to do it, and like I said, for me, I think this is the biggest goal that Kaapo Kakko has ever scored while he's been in the NHL, and this leads me to something else that I've been wanting to get to, something that I've been trying to circle back to for a couple of days here. We're at the point, so many things happen with this team on a just nonstop basis right now with all the drama on the ice, away from the ice, players that have been underperforming and trade rumors and whatnot. I'm at the point where I feel like I need to do 2 episodes per day. Like we might have to, instead of 5 episodes per week, we might have to boost it up to 10, at least until things settle down a little bit. But among the many things that have come out over the last handful of days here are the rumors that have picked up that maybe the Rangers would be open to trading Kaapo Kakko. And as we all know, the Rangers put up that memo a few days ago where, they're open for business. They're looking to maybe shake up the core a little bit, maybe move one of the members of the core. And the 2 names that were on top of that list were Jacob Trouba and Chris Kreider. I'll admit, look, when Kaapo Kakko signed his 1-year extension this offseason, and that's all it was, he only got 1 year, it kind of left me feeling at the time, even though it was the offseason, that Kaapo Kakko at that point still might have already played his last game as a member of the Rangers. The fact that they only did it for 1 year, to me, obviously it showed that they're not committing to him long term, but it also shows that maybe they're open for business a little bit. And with that being the case, it felt like maybe Kakko could be on the move, but that didn't happen. The season started. Kaapo Kakko has been here, and Kakko's not putting up gaudy offensive numbers, not by a long shot, but he's contributing at the level that you'd like to see a third liner contribute. That's the only line he's played on really all season is the third line. And he's playing sound hockey. He's playing solid hockey pretty much game in and game out. Not saying there's offensive fireworks every night, because there's not, but he's out there working hard every game. That line, whoever he's with, and we've seen a lot of different guys kind of come and go on that third line this season. This game, the third line was Mika and Kreider and Kakko, or at least that's how they were listed. But yeah, he's going out there and playing sound hockey. And a trade of Kaapo Kakko just does not make any sense to me whatsoever. Because what would that exactly accomplish? They've talked about the need for maybe shaking things up, and that's why you hear a name like Jacob Trouba. That's why you hear a name like Chris Kreider. Now, I'm still in favor of trading Jacob Trouba. I know he got into the fight today, and a little bit more fire from him, a little bit more physicality, and that's all well and good. If the Rangers can find a way to move on from Jacob Trouba, I'm still completely open to that idea, and frankly, for that idea. We'll talk more about Trouba in a little bit here. But, if they trade Trouba, even if you're against the idea, you can still see where it's like, okay, well, they said they wanted to shake up the core, and they did exactly that. Same thing with Chris Kreider. Now, I am against the idea of trading Chris Kreider, and we're going to talk about him a little bit later as well, getting back into the lineup in this game. I thought he had a mostly positive impact, screening on a couple of goals that were scored by the Rangers. I don't want them to trade Kreider, but if they did it, you'd get a good return for Kreider, and you would do what you set out to accomplish if you're a member of the Ranger front office. You have indeed moved on from one of the core players, and you have shaken things up a little bit, and you're going forward. Again, trading Kaapo Kakko, like, what really does that accomplish? And I don't think the Rangers would be able to get back for Kaapo Kakko what he's actually worth. Like, are you really just going to flip Kaapo Kakko for like a 3rd-round draft pick or maybe a 2nd-round draft pick? I guess you could do that. You could say that anything's on the table, and maybe the Rangers aren't looking to go long-term with Kaapo Kakko. But again, I just don't know what that would do. Unless Kaapo Kakko is this like locker room anchor that's just weighing everybody down, which I really don't think is the case. To me, a trade of him just doesn't make any sense. And I'll take it a step further. I would be interested in the idea at a reasonable price and at a reasonable contract length, and hopefully without any no move protection. Or if you give him a no trade list, maybe you give him like 8 teams just to kind of throw him a bone and get him to sign the contract. But I would be open to a Kaapo Kakko contract extension. I mentioned this in a recent episode when we were talking about the Ranger defensemen and how poorly they've played. And I talked about at the time how I think Kaapo Kakko re-signing him is now a bigger priority than re-signing K'Andre Miller. So Kaapo Kakko for like a 3-year extension at like $3.25 million per season, who says no? I'd be completely fine with that. If he ever does live up to being the number 2 overall player, then you've got a steal. And even if he doesn't, you've got a sound, solid hockey player, defensively responsible, hardworking hockey player in your bottom 6. There's worse ways to spend $3.25 million per season in this sport than on such a contract for Kaapo Kakko. And plus, I feel like he likes playing in New York. I've always gotten the impression, listening to him in interviews, that he wants to figure it out with the Rangers. He wants to be here. I got that impression after the season ended last year. Let's give him the chance, and let's see what happens. And I'll leave you with one quote from Kaapo Kakko after the game. I thought this was kind of funny. I think some of you guys will get a kick out of it as well. But he was asked about Jacob Trouba's fight at the start of the game. Here's what Kakko had to say about it. I think that was something we needed. I mean, we've been pretty bad lately. You got to do something. He's our captain. He's our leader. And I think that was a good start. I just love that quote. And I don't know if he meant to be that blunt, but he just says, I mean, we've been pretty bad lately. Yeah, no lies detected. And honestly, this was a catastrophic loss. If the Rangers really lost this game in any fashion, but the fact that they were up by 2 goals in the third period, you lose this game to Montreal in such a situation, it's a catastrophe. Kaapo Kakko, along with some help from his buddies Will Cuylle and Zach Jones, make sure that does not happen. But we've talked on and off about Jacob Trouba here to start the episode. We're going to turn our attention to him proper, talk about the game that he had, talk about the fight that he got into. Also, you get to Reilly Smith being a healthy scratch in this game. Somewhat of a surprise, although sort of kind of not really. So we'll talk about all that good stuff in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. The Rangers going to be back in action on Monday against the Devils. So big shout out to the everydayers, the people that, go through all the ups and downs and all the craziness of every Ranger season. We'll see what happens in that game, and whatever does happen, we'll be back to discuss it in the next episode. Might squeeze in an episode before that, maybe at sometime on Monday, before the game happens. We shall see. But either way, that's going to be a big game for the Rangers. They got to win that game. If you want to make this game count, because I'm sure there's some people rolling their eyes and saying, oh, great job. You beat the Montreal Canadiens. Way to go. There's some truth to that. Like I said, right now, you'll take a win any which way you can get it. But to really make it count and make it mean something, you got to beat the Devils, because after that, the Rangers are off 3 days in a row. You got to go into that break feeling good. And if you squeak by the Canadiens, but then lose to the Devils, I don't know how good you're going to be feeling. So the Rangers really have to dig down and knock off a tough Devils team for sure. But I want to shift our attention in this game to Jacob Trouba. I sent out a tweet before this game. I was expecting a fight, because at a certain point, somebody has to throw down, and whether you win or lose the fight, and Trouba lost this fight, but whatever happens, somebody has to try to spark this team to get the boys going a little bit. I sent out a tweet before this game that said, which Ranger is going to get into a fight in this game, and why will it be Will Cuylle? Now, of course, it was not Will Cuylle. Cuylle was mixing it up. He was playing his brand of physical hockey. He was involved in some extracurriculars, to be sure, but Jacob Trouba, the captain, answering the bell here, had to happen. It had to happen from somebody, and preferably the captain. The captain in this case here got to show some fire, got to spark the team a little bit, got to get the crowd going a little bit, make sure the crowd doesn't turn against you, get them back on your side a little bit. It happened. And, he lost his fight to Anderson. I'll give Anderson a point here, though, because he very easily could have declined this fight and just said, I don't care what the Rangers are going through, and you're trying to spark your team clearly here. I have no interest in doing this fight. So I'm glad that he obliged there, and Trouba was able to go ahead, drop the gloves, try to get the guys going a little bit, which I think it did. You see them on the bench. They were cheering and tapping their sticks and whatnot, and some of the guys seemed really into it. I'm glad it was Trouba. Look, I'm not a fan of the way Jacob Trouba has played recently. I think that's obvious. If you had seen any recent episode, that's for sure. But just as certain as I am to call out players that are playing with a lack of energy, a lack of fire, a lack of competitive drive during a just terrible 5-game losing streak, I will certainly also give them props when they do the right thing. Jacob Trouba did the right thing here. Like I said, somebody had to spark this team. I'm not one for senseless violence, but as we all know, fighting is part of the game. I was calling for the Rangers, somebody on this team to drop the gloves heading into this game. I'm glad somebody did, and I'm even happier that it was the captain in Jacob Trouba. But what about the rest of the team? Did they follow suit after he did this? Because you could have this fight happen and nothing really occurs after that. It's just the same flat, lifeless performance. But I think overall, the Ranger performance was a heck of a lot better in this game than certainly we've seen recently. And yeah, things got dicey at the end there, but despite all that, I do feel like the Rangers deserve to win this one. They were skating a heck of a lot better than they have in a very, very long time. There was a heck of a lot more physicality, some bone-jarring hits, some extracurriculars after the whistle. Even Jonathan Quick was getting into the action there. We'll talk about that in a second as well. Better forecheck, I thought. Mostly better defense, maybe with the third period notwithstanding. There were a couple of times where they lost track of their guys. Lafreniere was just kind of standing near the boards when the Canadiens had the puck in the Ranger zone. That led to the Canadiens' first goal of the game. We did have a Ranger. I think it was the game-tying goal. I don't even remember who it was, but there was definitely a Ranger sliding across the ice. He kind of had to in this situation, but yeah, I don't know. The defense was a little bit leaky. Quick picked them up more often than not. A lot fewer odd man rushes, though, than we've seen the Rangers give up in recent games as well. So that was obviously a very nice sign. You did have a rough start in this game, but I liked how, and they didn't have Trouba on the ice for the start of this game, so we can't blame him for that. But Quick has to make a couple of early saves. K'Andre Miller, after the whistle here, is scrapping with a player on the Canadiens. Didn't drop the gloves or anything, but he was going after him. So a little bit more aggression from K'Andre Miller, somebody that I think we want to see play with a little bit more of a mean streak. I mean, he's not the only one, but he's certainly one of the players that we'd like to see a little bit more edge from, in some of these games going forward here. There was also a stoppage right after this in front of the Montreal net, and we had Kreider. He was kind of, mouthing off to somebody on the Canadiens. Again, these are just little things, but I think little things kind of add up sometimes, and we saw this from the Rangers this entire afternoon. They were fired up. They had some intensity. They had some life in their eyes. You just look at their eyes, sitting on the bench during the play, after the play, whatever it might be. It seemed like guys actually wanted to be there, and they wanted to compete hard, and they wanted to win this game. And that's obviously, that should go without saying. That should be the norm. But as we know, it hasn't been the norm for this team recently. We had Carrick challenging. I'm not going to be able to pronounce this guy's name. The player on the Canadiens whose last name starts with an X. He was kind of mixing it up with the Rangers, pretty much throughout this entire game. And there was an instance here where, intentionally or not, he caught Lafreniere knee to knee right after Lafreniere had gotten rid of the puck. So Carrick went after him. Carrick looked to fight, and his would-be opponent here decided to turtle and not drop the gloves, and it ended up being a penalty on Carrick. So that was unfortunate. I can't crush Carrick for that because he's sticking up for a teammate and he's trying to invigorate his team a little bit. He's the fourth line center. There's only going to be so much of an impact that you're going to make. But I do feel like recently he's kind of been out there grinding. One of the few players that I think is giving you mostly an honest effort in the last handful of games. And then this play, I absolutely loved. We saw Adam Fox absolutely just clobber Slafkovsky. Slafkovsky was behind Vincent Trocheck at the Canadian blue line, and he cross-checks Trocheck down to the ice. And Fox sees this, and he comes up. Slafkovsky has the puck. He moves it. And this is one of the biggest fights that biggest hits, rather, that we've ever seen Adam Fox put on anybody. He laid him out, knocked him down to the ice. I mean, Slafkovsky, his head kind of like bumped into Trocheck's head, and we don't want anybody like having a concussion or anything like that, but it was really nice to see Adam Fox step up like this. and just clobber this guy and stand up for his teammate in a very meaningful way. I said in the game against Philly, I mean, the Rangers top to bottom were terrible in that game, but I thought that was the worst game I've ever seen Adam Fox play. To see him play better in general in this game, but, this was more important to me than anything else that Adam Fox did on this afternoon, coming up, sticking up for a teammate, and just leveling his opponent. Really nice to see. I mentioned a second ago, we got to talk about this. Jonathan Quick actually got a roughing penalty in this game. Now, Quick obviously had a very strong game in general. I think he would probably want the Caulfield goal back. The one thing I'll say in his defense here, though, for Quick is that Caulfield really, really sold the pass. I think everybody thought that the pass was coming. I know I did. Nevertheless, the puck did get through Quick. Quick played well overall, but there was an instance in this game I forget which period it was, but you've got a scrum in front of the net after Quick has frozen the puck, and you've got Doc trying to shove Mika backward on top of Jonathan Quick, which he sort of did, and then we get basically a 5-on-5. I don't want to say brawl because there weren't any real punches thrown, but basically a 5-on-5 wrestling match. So, you've got Slavkovsky. He's got Lindgren in a headlock and is really kind of turning his head in a not good way. Cuylle was livid after that happened. Cuylle was really trying to get at Slavkovsky. Berard was in there trying to tackle the Canadiens player whose name starts with an X. Again, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that because I know I'm going to butcher it. Quick was trying to get at Doc, and then there was a long delay here while they figured out all the penalties and everything that had happened. And it was great because, not too long after this, they're announcing all the penalties on the PA system, and they announced that Jonathan Quick got 2 minutes for roughing, and the crowd went nuts. It's about, other than the game winner, this might have been as loud as they were the entire game. That they love that. So, yeah, man, I mean, this was a chippy, nasty game. It's probably a good type of game for the Rangers to play right now. They needed something like this. They needed a kick in the you-know-what. They needed the temperature to rise in one of these games, and that certainly happened here. So I think Trouba, setting the tone early in this game with that fight, it does feel like his teammates followed suit with some of the examples that I just mentioned, a bunch of other things as well. I mean, we saw some big hits. Berard was in the middle of some things. Adam Edstrom had a big hit, at least one big hit. Other examples too, but it was just nice to see Jacob Trouba play with some physicality. There was a big hit where him and Trocheck really kind of sandwiched their opponent and knocked him down to the ice. So that was a big play there. Trouba made a really nice play on one of the penalty kills, was able to deflect a pass out of the zone. So better from Jacob Trouba. Hopeful that he can pick it up and hopeful that he can get back to leading this team. Maybe the guy that threw his helmet 2 years ago, yelled at his bench, tried to get everybody fired up. Maybe that guy is still in there somewhere. We can certainly hope so. One other thing that I got to mention about Trouba here, though, because I thought this was very interesting. We're getting to the lineup in just a little bit here. We're going to talk about, the line combinations, the fact that they scratched Reilly Smith, a bunch of other things as well. But one thing I want to mention right here, since we're already talking about Trouba, so they switched the defense pairings. Trouba is on the third pairing with Zach Jones. Something that I found very, very interesting about this game was that Jacob Trouba, of all the Ranger defensemen, had easily the least amount of time on the ice. Now, of course, part of the reason for that is that he got a 5-minute major for fighting. So right there, that's 5 minutes that you're obviously not allowed to be on the ice. So I think that certainly affected Trouba's ice time at least a little bit. But he ends up, even with the 5-minute major, with only 13 minutes and 37 seconds of ice time. The Ranger defenseman with the second least amount of ice time was Zach Jones at 16:50. So he's more than 3 minutes behind the Ranger D-man that has the second least amount of ice time. And I know he was taken out of the equation for 5 minutes there, but I don't think Trouba would have been on the ice for all 5 of those minutes. He would have gotten, an extra, 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes maybe. He was way behind the rest of the Ranger defensemen as far as time on the ice. And at a certain point, that needs to be done. I mean, he just hasn't played well recently. There's a lot of Rangers that haven't played well recently. He can work his way back into it. He can earn his ice time back. But I did find that interesting that even with the 5-minute major taken into the equation here, that he did lose so much ice time. I also like Trouba with Jones. I think Jones is probably the ideal trade partner. Man, too much trade talk lately. I've got trading on my mind. He is the ideal defense partner for Jacob Trouba right now. I'm going to explain why and talk about these lineup decisions in just a second here. We will get to all that stuff in just a minute. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on real money sports action. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. Prize Picks now offers Venmo for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account this sports season. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Once again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. A lot still to discuss here. A lot of interesting lineup decisions. Obviously, you get Filip and Chris Kreider back in the lineup. Thought they both looked good in this game. And look, I mean, right off the bat, the one thing you can say is that without Filip and without Chris Kreider in the lineup, as has been the case, I think Chytil ended up missing 6 games for Kreider. I think it was only 2. But they are 2 of the better, more important players on the Rangers. So the Rangers have been a little bit compromised without those guys in the lineup. It does not excuse the way that they played in the preceding 5 games, because you can lose any which players you want, but you have to show some effort. And the Rangers didn't for the most part in those 5 games. But they're back now. They both played well in this game, like I said. With Chytil, you never really know what's going on because obviously the concussion history. But then they said that this most recent thing wasn't a concussion. But then why is he not in the lineup? Is it just some other kind of upper body injury? Is it actually a different kind of upper body injury for Filip Chytil? You know, Chytil talked about it after the game, but he was pretty mum on the whole thing. And that's his right. You know, he doesn't have to go into any detail if he doesn't want to. But that's always going to be touch and go with Filip Chytil going forward, at least for the foreseeable future. And then with Kreider dealing with some back spasms, that's what he said back in the lineup here today. He don't look good. He kind of infused his team with some speed, some energy. Hopefully this team got a boost by the mere fact that Filip was back on the ice and back into this lineup. I mean, he's gone through hell the last handful of seasons here. And to get him back out there, hopefully that's something that sparked this team as well. He looked dangerous on some rushes, did Filip I mentioned earlier how, you know, the game-winning goal that was scored by Kaapo Kakko, it doesn't happen if Filip doesn't make a great play at the blue line to keep that puck in the zone and keep the play alive there. So that was obviously awesome to see. There was a little thing that Filip did too, where he kind of bailed out the Rangers. The Rangers made a bad pass in their defensive zone, and it looked like it was going to turn into a turnover and possibly a grade A scoring chance for the Canadians. Chytil reacted very quickly on this play, got control of the puck, and just skated it right out of there. So that was obviously nice to see as well. And then Kreider, you know, he overall had a good game. Took that bad offensive zone penalty. That was unfortunate for sure. But the one thing that you got to say in Chris Kreider's defense, and the one thing that he did well for the Rangers in this game, is he was screening on 2 of the goals that the Rangers scored. So that was nice. That's something that Kreider can do very well. It looked like, at least on the one that he was trying to deflect the puck, he missed it, but the goal was scored anyway. So that it's all good there. Look, Kreider, there's probably some people listening to this that are still in favor of trading him. I'm against it. As upset as I was with how Kreider was playing before he came out of the lineup, I just don't see that as a net positive for the Rangers. And unless you're just, you know, that hell-bent on a shakeup, or you think you can get something big back for Chris Kreider, you know, I can at least hear you out on that viewpoint. But Kreider, yeah, I'm not looking to trade him if I'm the Ranger GM. So we'll see how it goes. But some other big news as far as the lineup is concerned. Reilly Smith was scratched. You had Chytil and Kreider both coming back into the lineup for this game. So you knew 2 forwards have to come out. And you pretty much figured that Brodzinski would be one of them. I feel bad even saying that because he does play hard. He does bring some energy to the rink. But process of elimination, if 2 forwards are coming out, he's very likely going to be one of them. He indeed was. But who's the second guy that's going to come out? I didn't think it would be Reilly Smith. I didn't even really consider it. But that's why I mentioned earlier in this episode where it was surprising, but at the same time, not really all that surprising. Because you've got two guys in Chytil and Kreider who are going to play in the top 9. So you're going to take out, probably somebody, at least one of the two guys that are coming out of the lineup is going to be a top 9er. And in this case, it ends up being Reilly Smith. If Laviolette wanted to just play this by the book or kind of, in some ways, take the easy way out, he could have scratched Adam Edstrom. I mean, hey, he's a rookie, right? He's played every single game. It's a long season. Let's give the kid a little bit of a breather. You could have gone with that reasoning. You could take out Sam Carrick. Overall, I think he's played hard, but obviously there's limited upside there. You could take out Jimmy Vesey, who I don't think has really stood out in any meaningful way recently. I mean, he does play, a solid brand of hockey, I think, and he does give you an honest effort. So my money probably would have been on one of those players coming out, but because that fourth line has mostly played well, and because Reilly Smith has really not played that well and hasn't really offered a lot of offense, which is mostly his job, he was the odd man out. And like I said, I don't really have any problem with it. You look at Smith's stats on the year, 3 goals and 9 assists in 22 games. It's not like he's been absolutely dreadful the entire season, but he hasn't really done a whole lot. He feels like one of those guys that, at least thus far, just has not really moved the needle all that much. He's just kind of there. That's kind of how I described it in a recent episode. The question that this also begs, too, is he out for the next game? The Rangers are playing the Devils. They won. They snapped their 5-game losing streak. Wasn't perfect, but they won. They got the 2 points that they had to get. We know that coaches often don't like to change their lineup after a win. And when you win a game after losing 5 in a row before that, it feels like they'd be even less likely, to make a change. So we'll see. No idea for sure, what the future holds for Reilly Smith. I mean, he'll eventually get back in there. But again, it's surprising when you first hear it. And then when you think about it, it's like, no, Smith being scratched, it's really not that surprising. So it is what it is. I don't have any problem with it whatsoever. As far as the new line combinations in this game, it's funny. Our last episode, we did a longer episode. I never even talked about the different line combinations. And even now, I think we're going to save it for a future episode. To me, when they switched the lines against the Flyers, it felt like rearranging the furniture on the Titanic. It was like, what is this even going to do? I appreciate the idea of doing it, but nothing was going to change in that game against the Flyers, at least not in any significant way. But they went with different lines in this game. And Kreider and Mika both listed as being out of the top 6. Along with Kaapo Kakko. I think that was the way to go, because when you look at the guys that were ahead of them in the lineup, Panarin, Chytil, Cuylle, that was your top line, and then Berard, Trocheck, Lafreniere, you can't really look at any of those guys and say that Mika or Kreider deserves to be in the top 6 more than either of or any of those players. So for that reason, I didn't have any problem with it. But one more thing I want to talk about as it pertains to the lineup here before we call it, Zach Jones and Jacob Trouba. First of all, it was time for Jacob Trouba to move down to the third pairing. And I know there's going to be some people that say, oh, what about Lindgren? He's been bad. What about K'Andre Miller? He's been bad. You know what? You got to try some different things. We saw Lindgren on the third pairing earlier this season. Miller has been kind of moved around. He's had a couple of different defense partners for sure. He was with Schneider in this one. This is the way to go. Here's the thing. With Jones being with Trouba, at least Trouba, his lack of speed, lack of agility out there, it's covered up a little bit by the fact that you've got probably the quickest Ranger defenseman in Zach Jones and the defenseman that can move the puck better than maybe any other Ranger defenseman right now. Trouba, among the problems that he's had recently, it's the fact that him and whoever he's out there with, they get hemmed in their own zone for such long periods of time. It just doesn't seem like they have any kind of an answer. They can't move the puck. They can't get the puck out of the zone. At least with Jones out there, he can pick up the slack in that area, because Zach Jones is very good at that. He can skate the puck out himself. He can move the puck. He seems to make good decisions with the puck. So if Trouba's under duress in the defensive zone, man, just get the puck over to Zach Jones and let him take care of the rest. And, Jones, I think he's played more physical than he's probably gotten credit for, but he is a small defenseman. I mean, there's no way around that. Trouba can pick him up when it comes to the physicality department. So I like that pairing. I think right now that makes the most sense. And I'm very curious to see what the time on the ice is going to be going forward, because obviously Trouba's was way down in this game, but we shall see how the Rangers look to play it. But that will do it for today, guys. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's @LO _NY_Rangers, and definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.